And it's almost 7 o'clock. We're a few seconds early. It's Wednesday night here in Alberta. Welcome to the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk. I am one of your hosts, MacKenzie Wilson. Alongside me is Chris in the middle, and our special guest tonight, Bill Biko, also a resident landlord here in Calgary. As always, guys, we're landlords helping landlords, here to answer you guys' questions tonight. We're going to take some topics off of the Facebook group and do a deep dive, help everyone understand a little bit better what's going on and figure out some of their challenges. Before we get there, let's quickly say hi. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great, lots of stuff going on the site this week, lots of information, lots of new members. Wow, welcome everybody to the program. Over 1,600 members now. I'm amazed.
Wow,
absolutely amazed.
That is something. That is, you go on holidays for about 10 days. We didn't do a show last week, and our numbers are still growing well. So it just shows the community that we've got and everyone here to help everyone else, and it's a challenging business. So it's pretty cool to see that kind of engagement.
Yes, it's excellent. So what's Bill been up to?
Just working away, having some fun, getting some stuff done. So
nice.
Checking up on the forum every couple of days because there's always so much new stuff that shows up in there.
Oh, it's incredible, the stuff that's popping up. So yeah. It's tough too, keeping a. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming with, as administrators, we have to keep an eye on what's going on and what the content is going up there. But actually, it's a good opportunity for me just to let people know when you are quoting something. The first thing that jumps out to me is when you want to give someone some advice or talk about the things, the first thing that pops out to me, well, I think it is or it should be. As soon as I see that, then I question the credibility of the answer. So sometimes you're right, but folks, when you are putting information up, do your research so that you can answer it with confidence. So here's the other benefit of that is you've done your research and and you can say this is what it is. And so I'll just so everybody's fairly warned is that when we see that as moderators and administrators, that's a flag to us right away. Start checking, and good chance we'll delete the comment. It's nothing against you. It's just come at this with the background knowledge that everybody's looking for. They're looking for the answer, and you should be able to write it without a doubt after you've researched it. So thank you though for your participation. Yeah,
and on the flip side of that too, if you don't know, you're making a best guess. Say, hey, I think it is. This is my guess. This is an estimation. Say what it is. We just don't want opinions being presented as facts, because that's where people get misled. And really, the direction of this group is providing that value information.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
So for the folks that haven't met Bill Biko, he's definitely one of our past guests. Bill, maybe give us the 30-second pitch of who you are, your bread and butter, and your experience in the landlording business, and give people a bit of a taste.
I can't do it in 30 seconds. So
15 seconds.
Oh man. I've been a landlord since 2003. I've had a little over 1,500 tenants since then. I've done a lot of different things, from flipping to being landlord to rent to own, everything in between. I have a ton of experience in the world of evictions. I run AlbertaEviction.com, where I teach landlords how to go through the eviction process. And then from there, I created The Educated Landlord, where I'm helping landlords basically around the planet with a bunch of little landlord tips and information. So that's it. That's the shortest I can do.
Perfect. Love it. Awesome. So we started a new format, our last show, which was 2 weeks ago. We're going to do a little more, I'm not going to call it freestyle, but we're going to just be reading right from the page. We're going to try to answer more questions in a shorter amount of time, is really what it comes down to. So on that note, let's really get into it. We're already 8 minutes into it. So Chris, you got the first question lined up, or Bill, do you got a question on the tip of your tongue? Which do you guys want to take a stab first?
Chris, have a go.
Okay, I was just I figured you'd do that to me.
I have one. When you get prepped, I'll go with this one. So it actually came from another group. I was just reading through one of the groups here, and it says, how does someone proceed with a co-signer that is a company? If a company is co-signing for their employee, what do you check, and how do you do your background checks? So you're renting to a corporation, and they're signing a lease on behalf of an employee. How do you proceed with this? So let's talk about background checks and maybe do you do anything differently with your lease structuring? Bill, do you want to take a first stab at this?
So I've done this a few times over the years. As part of my rooming house business, I was actually pursuing a lot of companies, and I would typically sign the leases directly with the company, putting all the responsibility on them. So if there were issues, in a lease scenario like that, when you're dealing with a company, if the company has the lease, they can get rid of the tenants quite quickly if they're letting the tenant go. So it's a slightly different structure. Now, that was a while ago, so some of this is just stuff I remember, but it really came down to having that good relationship with the company, knowing who the company was. So I was dealing with companies that were bringing workers in from out east, so they needed places to put people. So I did everything from single rooms to these companies. To one company I rented a whole furnished house to for 2 full years. And
nice.
Worked phenomenal. They took care of everything. And the one was actually right over in Ogden, close to where you have some property there.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I'll expand upon that, Bill. I like you're really using the same lease. I think clarity of communication and some written documentation is super important. So if you have a company sign on behalf of an employee that's going to rent or going to be your actual tenant, the person staying in the house, you want to make sure the company knows what they're responsible for. So have that in writing and say, hey, you guys are responsible for all this person's actions. So if they damage the place, they do this, they do that, I'm coming after you for fees because you, of course, are the leaseholder. On top of that, when you're doing your background checks, they're probably going to be kind of pretty similar. You're going to do Google reviews. I want to see the web presence of that company. If they're organized, they should have some sort of website put together. You can look at the Better Business Bureau for reviews. That nowadays that's pretty similar to just find a general Google review. Maybe look up the employees on LinkedIn. See if depending on the size of the company, you should see a LinkedIn presence. Again, validating who you are talking to is they are who they say they are. And then my last take on that would be, I'm just looking over here. Who would you have sign the lease? I would make sure that person within that company has authority to sign a lease on behalf of the company. So if it's a smaller company, you want to maybe go up a little bit higher up the food chain, maybe from a manager, might be a higher mid-level manager, maybe a director or VP. It really depends on the size of the company and what you're comfortable with. If you've gotten good impression, they've been professional, organized, you should also be seeing emails directly from the employees. So if they're like, well, let's just use TELUS for example, you should see an example of so-and-so first name dot last name at TELUS.com. If you're getting emails from a Gmail or a Yahoo account and they're supposed to be representing company ABC, that's a little sketchy. You should typically have a business type email. I talked a lot there.
It's great information, so it's good. It's worthwhile.
Cool.
Yeah, Chris, any thoughts on renting out the company? Have you had any experience? Have you done that before?
Rent out to a company?
Yeah, have you done a lease with the company directly?
I had that opportunity here just this summer where they came there. Actually, a crew working on a bridge out on Highway 2, and they were looking for multiple places. Wasn't sure. I had it was great income for a short period, but you know, as luck had it for me, someone came. They wouldn't commit quick enough, so luck came in. Luck was that a family came to me and said, "Yeah, we're looking for a place." So they're giving me 1 year, and they trumped the company. But I also had enough connections in town. We actually fixed them up in an apartment building, and the apartment building got five units rented out because of them trying to keep our guys all in one place. So.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome.
Yeah. So, you want me to grab a question off the question here?
Give her.
We got one of the questions this week came out Monday was regarding changing of locks and what kind of locks. So I'm going to make it kind of a two. First is tenants changing locks and not giving landlords a key, or landlords going in and changing a lock, which you know you're not supposed to. If you don't, you do now. But let's talk about the tenant that changes the lock, and you find out you haven't been there for a while, and you find out 6 months later that, you know, or a year later, even as some of the examples came up. So you say, well, I want a key, and one of the things was the tenant wasn't going to give a key to the landlord. Say, well, why do you need a key? It's well, the law is, and it's there's a section in the Residential Tenancy Act, and it's actually a $460 fine. And what happens is, people, well, what do you do about it? well, the answers seem to come up, well, it's civil, that's what you get from law enforcement. And people said, well, evict them, we'll do this. Here's what it is that under the Residential Tenancy Act, it's a ticket. It's just like speeding down the highway. The police they can write you a ticket, and it's $460. So right before the policeman's going to hand a $460 because they didn't want to give a $3 key to you, the whole attitude of the whole scenario changes pretty quickly. But certainly the fix to this, and here's the other equation here, is the police not understanding what needs to be done. So
what is the challenge there, Chris? Do you see cops coming in and not actually enforcing that law, or maybe they don't know about the law? How would you?
Two sides to that. One is I actually, I'll be honest, that those of you who don't know me, I have 25 years of policing, and I'm retired now, and I see this two ways. One is the officer really truly doesn't understand the regulations or the law, and there are so many laws, federally, provincially, that they can't possibly know them all, and it's likely because they haven't had an opportunity to deal with that portion of a statute. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the quick answer is, oh, it's civil, you'll have to deal with it on your own. That's the wrong answer, because their job is to enforce all provincial statutes, and this is a provincial statute. And they don't know that it's a simple fix. It's a ticket. You just walk over, write out a ticket, hand it to them, the file's done, you go from there.
So you're saying we could run into situations, and we see it pass in the group here, where and landlords call the cop to the situation where they don't have access to their rental unit because a change of locks by a tenant, and then the cop or the RCMP officer, depending on what jurisdiction we're in, says no, that's a civil dispute, and you're saying no, that's wrong. So what would we do as an educated landlord in this position?
So as an educated landlord, now I put up here the other night the terms that you need to use, and it simply is this: is that this is it's called a Part 2 ticket. In just the short of it, in a ticket, there's 4 parts to it: 1, 2, 3, 4. And Part 2 is a ticket that has a voluntary penalty on it for $460, or they get a court appearance. So they can either pay the ticket or go to court. And if they don't pay the ticket, there's actually a warrant issued for their arrest. So because they didn't pay the ticket. So what you say, the police officer says, this is a Part 2 ticket. This is a provincial statute with a fine that you do enforce. And if they argue with you, no, we don't do that, your educated answer back to them, so yes, you do, because you enforce provincial statute. Please refer to section, I think it's 24 of the Residential Tenancy Act and this is key, once you know these things, they know you know more than they realize. Look in your specified penalty book. It's a little tiny green book that has all the fines written out in them, and say, look at your specified penalty book under the Residential Tenancy Act. Section 24 has a fine for $460. That puts the brakes on right there, because now you have more research than they do. But mm-hmm. The great thing about it is how you present this. If you present it with attitude, fully expect attitude back. Absolutely. If you're going to dish it out, if you're going to give it out, expect it back. If you talk to someone in an educational capacity and talk to them, say, well, here's what I know, and I'd like to explain this to you, and give it to them that way, you have a partner now, you don't have an adversary. And that's the key.
Ask them, hey, what are your thoughts on the situation? Ask an open-ended question once you share that knowledge that they just shared, Chris. And think, well, let me look into it. Maybe they go back in the car. Here's a question, Chris, and maybe, I don't know if it's changed now, but, do police officers, can they go in the cop car and look up this information and realize this person's right, it's this section in the act, and here's how we enforce it, and they can come back and solve that situation as appropriately?
Well, I got an even simpler thing than that. They don't even have to go to their car.
Perfect.
Right? It's all at our fingertips now. How many times we told, just Google Residential Tenancy Act, a Queen's printer, and the whole PDF is right there for you. We tell people that. You need to download that. You need to have it so you know it. And you need to read that. And I tell people, this kind of sounds funny, but either print it off and take it into bed and read a couple of pages every night so you understand it.
You'll be going to bed a lot earlier. I'll put you to sleep.
Figure out a way to deal with that, but anyway, so that's the short of it. Well, that was kind of long, but really how you have to win friends over. And a classic person is Rob Bonin, and he's on our page as known as Rob Bow.
Yeah.
Rob Bow's, he's a feisty little ginger, but he's our ginger. And I've had different ways of saying that, but I like him because he rubs, but in the end, he wins you over because he is very knowledgeable, and he's also not afraid to say when he's wrong either. And he's won the police. So actually, what's interesting in Red Deer is the police will actually phone him up, the ones that he's got the good rapport with, and they'll say, hey, Rob, we need to deal with something. How do we do that? Boom. Rob actually has the book right there, flips it open. He can read it in 2 or 3 seconds, and he helps the police catch up on how to deal with stuff. And I find that to be a very interesting relationship that he has with them. Bill, you've been nodding and I've been talking. What do you got? Any input on that?
Well, you're right on with all that. First, from how you got to deal with the police whenever you have an issue with the police. I mean, I see a lot of landlords get all, I don't know if uppity is the word, but they get so demanding, and that's not going to work when you're dealing with the police. You need to work with them, and they are more than willing to work with you. And I've had so many difficult tenants over the years, and if you're up front, you explain what's going on, you explain that you understand the rules, and if they need any clarification, you can probably provide a little information. It goes a long ways towards being just this grumpy landlord who doesn't know what they're doing and is demanding something be done.
Yeah. And like,
as soon as you go in demanding something with the police, I'm telling you, don't do that. Go and make a friend. As soon as you start using words like, I pay your salary, you know what? You're on the losing end. You know what? When I was policing, I couldn't be bothered. If someone's going to start to tell me how to do things, even though I might not know, my walls are up and I just want to walk away from it. Yeah. But if you take the approach of, can we just talk for a second? This is what I know, and show people, that changes it because you're not adversarial.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we move forward, are we getting less and less laws, or are we getting more and more laws? It's an ever-growing amendments and new laws and regulations and legislation being approved. There's only going to be more and more knowledge that every police officer has to have memorized to some fashion. So it's quite possible a lot of the time they just simply don't know it. So having your awareness and knowing what is the law and not going again to access to your premise, just have those conversations, and it'll be a lot further. And then coming in and asserting jurisdiction doesn't really quite work that way. So
the part 2.1 on what I was answering when it comes to the actual locks, some people, one of the things came up was they had one of the smart locks with a code in it, and I posted some pictures. If you can go and put a coded one in if you want, or you can just go ahead and put a regular door handle lock in. But there's a little tiny key thing that goes in there, and you can help me out, guys, if you know, but you can go in and you can change the key. You can have several sets of keys and change them as your renters rotate through. But I also know there is another lock out there, and Andrea Workington, who is another member on here and a very astute and knowledgeable landlord, she has a 2-lock system. One is the master key and one is the regular key. And there's actually 2 in there, I think. I don't know. Do you know about those, Bill?
Yeah, this is pretty old school. So I've been using those for years, and it's awesome. So I had 72 doors at one time, and I had one key that opened every one of them. And that just makes your life so much simpler as a landlord. If I had to do it again, though, I would probably use more of these smart lock systems. And there's some really good smart locks now where you can have a master code. So you recode all of your properties with that master code, and quite often you can put 2 extra codes in there, one for your contractors. So that works out really well. With the master key system, it's just a special way of keying the locks. And if you know how locks work, it's a matter of putting extra pins in there so they go up and down at different levels. So.
Right.
So I'm actually kind of curious, because I'm very much post key era. I am all keyless locks. I use Lodge Connect. It is a little bit more expensive of a deadbolt. The reasons why I picked it is it does have the ability to tie into home automation. So they are either Z-Wave or Zigbee compatible, which is what most of the wireless communications are for home automations. I haven't used the home automation part yet because it's expensive. I haven't really had the need to justify doing that, but at some point in the future when I'm looking for a competitive advantage in the marketplace, probably having the ability to unlock their rental property from their own cell phone would be kind of a nice selling feature for the tenant, or maybe turn some lights on and off. But maybe, Bill, I would be kind of curious. So just, I've never really done the key format. So maybe can you give us like a high level run through of how you had your system set up to manage at 1.72 doors off of a key system?
I had keys lettered from A to U and locks and deadbolts to match it. So it was a matter of, switching locks out. I'd have a whole bunch in reserve. So I'd have 10 locks sitting off on the side. As somebody moved out, I'd take a set of deadbolts and replace them with a new key. And then I'd just go back to my lockbox and it's like, okay, it's key C. So I'd grab key C and I'd bring those to the property and put them with the property. Also with the old school stuff, I used to have the old master locks, and I had one on my desk, but I don't have one now. One of the master lock keypads. So you can put it around a door handle, you can put it around smaller fences or the hose sockets off of the house, and I'd put a backup key in there as well. And not necessarily for the tenant's use, but I'd use that for contractors. And that's where a lot of these smart locks now, we can put the extra keys in. So I have some trusted contacts as far as contractors go, and they would have access to my codes to go in and fix a dishwasher or laundry or do plumbing, and still had to coordinate it with the tenant to make sure that was okay. But it just saves so much of my time. There's nothing like driving halfway across the city to watch somebody do a 15-minute job and then drive back home again. So
yeah, what is the value in that, right?
So if you are interested in knowing a little more how to do that, I'm sure, Bill, you're open to anybody just help talking to them a bit further and how to set up that key system. And another landlord that I know, and I've seen his key system, and it's really slick, is Gord Heisler, and he's a part of this, and he has quite a few. Actually, he was on a show here one day, and he and his son and they actually went and bought their own key cutting machine because they had enough doors, and they've had to cut enough keys over the years that it paid for itself. So,
economy of scale.
Yeah.
Do you have a bunch of pre-cut keys in too, Bill, that you'd run through and just rotate them and rekey a set of doors or something?
Yeah,
or how?
I have a whole box of keys, A to U, and there's two. Typically, there'd be 2 to 3 of each of the key in there.
Okay.
And if I needed more, I have a master ring with all the keys on it as well. So I take my master ring down. I'd have my list, and it's like I need 2 A's, 3 F's, 4 G's. And I just stop at the local key shop and go, here, I need 2 of each of these, or 2 of this, and 2 of this, and 3 of this, and 3 of this, and I'll be back in an hour.
Yeah. Okay.
And you were always made sure that you cut off of your original, not off of a copy that caused you grief down the road.
You always had to check it later, because even when you get them cut at professionals, sometimes the key doesn't work. So you get it cut, and then you go make sure it works in the locks, and everything's good.
I'll give a quick run through in the new system. So I'm sure most locks are similar to this, but I'm going to speak again from a Solage Connect model series. So you get 2 sets of codes. You get a programming code, and you get codes that you can assign to each of your tenants. So the locks that I was using, I think they held up to 20 or 30 different codes you could do at one time. And there's a programming code. You could also change the programming code to a master programming code. So now I have the ability, this is what I've done. I've got a master programming code for, let's do the math. I've got 6 doors, and some of them have 3 doors at the house. So I have in around 10 of these locks floating out there right now. And I got one code, I can program them all quickly. I can delete codes, add codes really slickly. And every tenant, let's say it's a suite property and there's a common back door. Well, that common back door will have 2 tenant codes in, a code for the tenants upstairs, a code for the tenants downstairs. And then, of course, I have about 3 codes programmed per door as spare codes that if I have a one-off case where I have to bring in a contractor quickly, I just burn one of these temporary codes and they can use it the next time I come out. I delete it, it's gone, there's no access. Yeah, and so every tenant only has to remember 1 code, even though they're going through multiple doors. That's nice. In terms of reliability, I see a question about how well does this work in the winter. My locks, the Sludge Connects, I've used now in Calgary. I'm going on 5 years now. So they're great. There's a caveat to that is the only time I've had trouble is I have one on my garage that's not insulated, so it's cold on both sides of the lock. Nothing will operate that because I don't know of any AA batteries out there that will work past minus 30 something. So if you don't have an insulated interior, and typically these locks come in two pieces, the computer side, the memory board, and the power sits on the interior where it's heated. And if you have that, if that interior is not heated like where I had in my garage, you will have problems when it gets down past sub minus 30. The batteries can't power the lock in that cold temperature, and that's going to be with any lock. It's not just one brand or the other. Nothing's going to work that well unless they're heated and insulated in some form or fashion. But yeah, they work in cold temperatures. The batteries, they take 4 AA batteries. They last over a year for sure. I'd say depending on the usage, a year to maybe 2.5 years at most. But and I put the onus on my tenants to replace the batteries. I say, hey, I'll get you set up here. You've got a fresh set of batteries when you first moved in, but anything after that, it's on you to replace. So.
Does it come with a master key in case the batteries die and it's locked, or?
Yeah, so I use 2 types. So the Sludge Collect is a deadbolt. I do actually have a physical key as well as a fail-safe backup if the battery dies. There's an interior version I use as well, and it doesn't come with a key, but there's a jumper on the front for a 9-volt battery. So the interior unit runs off a 9-volt battery, and then there's actually there's a positive and negative jumpers on the front. So if the battery internally dies, you take a fresh battery from the outside of the lock, put it in the bottom of the lock, plug in the codes, and it will still open up the lock. You can jump it from the outside with a fresh battery. So you can technically, what I tell the tenants, especially the ones in the common areas where I have an outside door and it goes up and down to 2 suites, I actually leave a physical brand new 9-volt battery in there. In the odd case, those 2 interior doors die on them, but the odds are super slim.
I'm sorry. The other nice point out of that is you're using the brand name lock. A lot of people try to use the knockoff cheaper locks to save a few bucks, and it just ends up they wear out faster, they cause more issues. There were some with Wiser moving a lot of their manufacturing overseas, and there was a lot of the locksmiths I talked to said that the last several years of Wiser locks have not been as good. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I can't say enough. I think they're great locks. They're easy to program. They're nice touch too, right? Because I tell all my tenants, hey, it's keyless entry. You'll never need a key again. And it works really slick. And most of the properties, all my properties are suited homes here in Calgary. There's typically 2 doors going in the property, a front door and a back door. Yes, the tenant only has 1 door from the outside coming in, but since it's suited, the other tenant can typically, if a battery goes down and they don't replace it in time, they can be let in that way. But you actually get it beeps. I can't remember if it beeps or if it glows like a flashes light. You know when it starts to die. It gives you a warning for a while, and then like, hey guys, go and put 4 batteries in here. So, anyways.
So let's move on to the next question. You want to pop that big question up there?
Sure, we got a couple here. Which one are you looking at there, Chris?
You're going to Cheryl Wagner's question that says, I just posted. So,
okay.
There you go.
I'll read it then. I just posted this in the group, but hopefully you can help. Some advice, please. We have a rental house with a main floor and a 1-bedroom basement suite. We are thinking of trying to sell it ourselves. The main floor is empty, our choice due to COVID. Our basement suite renter is moving out the end of August. Do we rent out the suite or leave it empty? We have no income for at least 1 month, and then rent it again if it doesn't sell. Rent it, we'd make sure the renter knows about, I don't know why I can't see the rest of it.
I can read off. Rented, we'd make sure the renter knows about selling. If rented it out, what wording would we need to be on paper? And would we say we'd be giving 1 month's notice to sell it? So there's quite a bit to this question here. So
yeah,
let's have to go pick it apart a bit here. So
Bill, you bought a bunch of doors. What would be your preference if you're buying a rental property? Would you rather buy it vacant or come with tenants?
Vacant. I want to be able to vet my own tenants. So, but that's more of an advanced type scenario. It's also easier to sell the property when it's vacant if you're selling it as a rental property, because somebody can go look at any time. You don't have to schedule. Well, some realtors, I was going to say all realtors, but some realtors think it's a real hassle trying to show a rented property because now they got to coordinate with the tenants. So suddenly it's like, we're supposed to go look on Tuesday, but I haven't heard back. So maybe we won't even show that one this week. Or since I have to arrange with tenants, we'll kind of skip that property. And if they don't like these other ones, maybe we'll show it Thursday or Friday or Saturday.
Yeah. And what kind of market are we in right now, Bill?
We're in a pretty good market as far as renters, so it wouldn't be hard to fill.
Yes, but if you're focused on, if you're focusing on selling though, right? Like, what's the buyer's market like, or the resale market like?
We're kind of in that weird phase right now. My understanding, talking to a lot of the investors, is a lot of them want to just sit on their cash right now because they know the market's going to be improving. You know, some are actively buying because it's a good time to buy. It's a good time to buy. It's a good time to buy. You know, tenant rents are going up. Some want to kind of hold off until we see where this rental or mortgage deferral and utility deferral stuff all starts to kick in, and maybe we get a few more properties on the market and prices start to come down, which is it's kind of my feeling. It's what we're going to see over the next 6 months. But again, if the numbers work on the property right now, they'll just work better in 6 months. So you know, if you've got the cash and it's burning a hole in your pocket, you buy now. If it's something you want to look at later, you're probably still going to be in a fairly good situation.
Reading some of the rest of the question is the person Cheryl saying, you know, leaving it empty because they're going to not have income. If you're in a situation where you're not going to have income, I think it and it's going to put some difficulty on you. I think you're going to have to rent it out. Do a good job in your screening of your tenant, and that goes without saying because you want a good tenant in there. And you're listing it like they're saying here as a rental to sell. You know, do a good job and have it set up. The rest of the question here is if the new owners want the renter to stay, how would that be stated in the agreement? Anything can be stated in a real estate sales. You just write it all in, and that they're going to assume your contract. When they get there, they can certainly go ahead and start to rewrite things. Anything can be done as in any way consensually. Some of it may not be if someone doesn't consent, but once you sell it, they're going to take over your contract and go from there.
Yeah. So I'll add on that. My thoughts are, so obviously if you're in a position to float the expenses for a month or two, I think, again, I don't know what area you're referring where you're trying to sell in. Obviously Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, and all the different areas, rural, urban, will have different days on market. I'm not even sure what they are right now. I think we're still from like 45 days on market, maybe on average right now. But if you can float it financially, I would do it. You can have a lot easier job selling it right now. It's definitely still a buyer's market out there. It's still, pointing that way. So any advantage you can give to yourself to make your property easier to sell, I would take it. But maybe if your finances don't allow you to do it and you have to get it rented out, be organized with that paperwork. So if someone's going to be considering assuming your tenant, show them that you've done the right work up front. Have your move-in inspection available, have the leases, have the, if you've done some other work, maybe like a smoke alarm test, you might have done, your different type of tenant screen. All that information, if you have it packaged and ready when someone comes to view the property and they're looking at making an offer and they're requesting information, and you can provide that information, it shows you just haven't put anyone in there. It might make it a lot easier to sell if they're convinced that you've done the right due diligence up front.
Yep.
All right, where are we at here?
Yeah, so I'm gonna move on to another thing here, and I'm just gonna throw this out there. Did you see that one clip, BC News, where the landlord removed all the doors and windows? Oh my God!
He didn't know. He didn't know.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know I could be an asshole.
Yeah.
Oh, like it's amazing what. I hope that everybody in this group is learning that, that's the best way to get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Not knowing is not an excuse. The laws are all freely available. Google is in everyone's pocket. There's no reason not to know.
And there's a great landlord group where you can ask questions too. You mentioned that.
Do you know of one?
I know one. I get together on Wednesday nights with some landlords, so you can get even more questions answered.
Oh yeah, right on, right on. Okay, let's dig into the books here for a question. Here's one. Okay, I'll just do this generically. Donnell Block put a question up, and it's regarding, they have a tenant who there's the lady and the new boyfriend, I believe, and then there's kids. But the relationship isn't working out, and she's asking the tenant saying, "Hey, look, we're up for renewal. Can I sign this myself?" And then it's coming down to where the fella says, "Yeah, well, I'm on the lease too, and I ain't moving." So what the landlord's now in a little predicament. They don't want to get involved in the middle of it. They want to keep it the tenant, but they also don't want all the drama to have to deal with now because they're fighting. So over to one of you guys here. I know what I do, but I'm going to throw it back to you guys.
I love the answer because I'd actually read that the other day when you answered that. And basically, yeah, it's don't renew the lease and make that side deal with the tenant that you plan on keeping. And you got to weigh that carefully. Is there going to be other potential drama if the other abusive person finds out they're still there? You may be better off just saying, you know what, let's just everybody go out and move on fresh and start over. But yeah, if you can get them all out and then start fresh with the new tenant, that's another opportunity.
Well, there's one thing I've learned from creating this group and working within it is I usually start off with a term lease, and then I let them go month to month, just as a bit of a selling feature. But I've learned through this group is, you know what, I lose a lot of control by doing that. And so what I'm now doing is I'm renewing leases to either a 6 month or a year. So I have some control and I can say, no, I'm not renewing, you're done. And I think that's pretty important. You know, do you go a 90-day, an 180-day, or a year, 9 months or a year? You figure it out. And I know I always want to get my tenants through at least the winter time, so I don't have the expenses and an empty place in the winter. And so I try to make any lease now that I renew get me through the winter months.
Yeah, good plan. So to add with that, you know, so many times you have tenants that say, you know, I really plan on buying a house in the spring, and I know that's 6 months away, and you want to sign a year lease. I personally, and some people may not like this, but I personally say, listen, if we sign a year's lease and you find a home and can give me at least 60 days notice and cooperate with me, I have no problem in breaking that lease and letting you go. You know, especially if they've been good tenants. And I've had that happen so many times. They're with you 2 or 3 years and they get to that point where they've saved up enough. And it's like, you know, let's sign a fixed term instead of month to month. You know, it protects me, and I will work with you if you need to get out of it early. And,
yeah.
Make it work.
Yeah, I like that. When I've had my lease arrangements, they've come to me and they're trying to better themselves. You know what? I'll tell them, yeah, I said, let's just work together. Can you find someone? I actually had a renter find me. He says, yeah, I know some people up at the hospital that I work with. They're looking for a place. Sure enough, it was an easy swap, and I ended up with another great tenant. So
yeah, and you sleep better at night instead of taking off doors and windows.
Yeah,
that's great. What else we got? Brennan's really, thanks, Brennan. Thanks for making that comment. He says, the ignorance of the law is no excuse. Absolutely. And I think if you end up going to jail, Brennan, I think is one of those guys that'll look after you there. I think he's got some certain type of job that does that kind of babysitting. So
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Do you have special cells for those guys, Brennan? All right, what else we got? Are you guys looking through the list there?
I'm digging right now. I don't have anything on the tip of my tongue. Bill,
okay, here's one. This is probably a good one for Bill here. It says financial questions from a Michael Gagne he put on here. He says, I already have 2 properties and I want to buy a 3rd one. Any advice about if we don't want to pay the 20% cash down? Can we do something else like a personal loan or whatever you call it? Please and thanks. What's your thoughts? You've done these for years, Bill.
Yeah, you're getting into danger zones now because you're getting into mortgage fraud if you're trying to work your way around some of these rules. There are some programs that are popping up, and we'd really need to have some of the mortgage brokers that are dealing with a lot of the rental property mortgages talking about that. But it's just gotten so much harder. And when I started, life was so good. You guys will just shake your heads. You could take over mortgages for $1.
Symbols.
Yeah, it was it was so easy. So that gave us a huge advantage, but they seem to constantly change the rules as you're going along. And now the big thing is, especially with the rental properties, you need that 20% down. So what does that look like? Is that working for another year or 2 or 3 to save up that money, or is that starting to look into some of the joint venture opportunities that are out there? Do you know other people that want to do the same thing? That's a whole nother 5-hour topic right there. But
5 hours, talk about days on end.
There's so many different ways you can start bringing other people in, and we did a lot of that. We did a lot of joint venture partners over the years, and it was everything from full partners to just money borrowing to reinvesting into other properties and moving it around. So one of the easiest tactics is, if you've had a property for a couple of years and you're looking for a joint venture partner for a new one, put them on the old property. You've got all the numbers, and maybe they have to buy in for a certain amount. That gives you the down payment that you need for the next one. That was one of our strategies to grow and scale fast.
And to play into that, you want to go down to the next question. Brendan's asking one question for all 3 of you, he says. And if you want to put that up, that plays right into what we're talking about here.
So if you're tight on funds and you see an opportunity to buy a property you don't want to miss out on and want to buy, can you work with your lender to get the property? I mean, of course, you lay all the cards on the table and can see what can be done. If you want to get in the creative side, there's definitely avenues there. I'd probably say a lot of it revolves around networking with a community of like-minded investors and mortgage brokers. Bill, I'm going to let you tag on the rest of this, because there's a whole whack of other strategies that we don't even talk about here. Like, we focus more on the landlording side of the business, obviously, by the name of the show. But
the agreement for sales, rent to own type options. You can get into private money, vendor takebacks. You need people who are willing to negotiate and work with you for a lot of that. And it's a matter of how badly do they need to sell a house. In a buyer's market, there's so many more opportunities to do the vendor takeback. You can do a vendor takeback. Basically is where the homeowner who's selling, or the person who's selling, leaves some money in the property, and
seller financing.
It's a great technique for them to potentially avoid some capital gains on a rental property or some extra tax expenses, dragging it out over a couple of years. It's a way for them to make the money they get out of a property actually do something. So, you sell your rental property that you've had for 25 years, and it's like, I've got all this money. Oh, hold it. Now, what am I going to do with this money? If you play the role of the bank and leave some of it in your rental property, maybe you're getting 5, 8, 12% interest on that money. So it's just another viable strategy, depending on where you are in your real estate career, or somebody who may be selling an option you can sell to them. But of course, your numbers have to also work. If you're paying somebody 10 or 12% interest on a vendor takeback, you've got to be making a ton of cash flow off the property to justify it. Yep. And have a solution to get that money off at some point.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yep. What do we got next here? What's the best for serving documents from the RTDRS? That's a good question. If you can serve them, if you can stand to see them, you can stand to be in the same space for about 30 seconds, serve them personally and get it over with and get it done. If you can't, walk up with a bunch of duct tape and tape it to their front door. Make sure you've got 2 copies, or sorry, the right amount of copies for the number of people that are on the lease agreement. So, and then I think if you're still having trouble serving them because they've moved out on you, I know you can serve them by email. You just have to have I haven't had to do it, but I know it's in the thing. Bill, what do you got there?
Yeah, it's the rules have modified now that COVID's come along to play with us. So you're supposed to make some actual attempts, and I'm helping a landlord down in Lethbridge with this right now, who actually texted me while we were talking. You're supposed to make attempts. You can't just blanket tape it to the door that there's a hearing. So you're supposed to make a few attempts, and I always recommend going with a friend or two, especially if you're concerned about your safety. I mean, RCMP officer, I'm a big guy. MacKenzie looks mean, so we're probably fine. But if you're concerned, if you've got a big bad guy living at the house that you're trying to evict or give a notice to, do not go alone. And you can actually call the police, and they will actually, if there's concerns for safety, they will show up with you you're on their schedule, they will not just say, oh yeah, we'll meet you there at 1. So you're kind of on their schedule. But if there's a safety issue, they'll show up with you and just make sure everything's copacetic and nothing's going out of control.
It's called a request to keep the peace, is what there's. A little trick of the trade. If you are going and someone just mentioned get a knockoff GoPro just for good evidence there. The other thing you can do is you can take your phone. You got the camera on the back here. First thing is you put it on airplane mode, because if your phone rings, it'll stop the video from going. So you put it on airplane mode, and you put it in your pocket so that the camera's just sticking out of your pocket like there. Just looks like you're carrying your phone. And you walk up, it'll record the whole thing and everything to see what's going on. And that's your opportunity to make yourself look amazing, because you're going to just go do it by the book, serve them. You've got video evidence that they were served properly. And that's if you're going to have a personal interaction with them. So I know it did save my bacon one time, in that I went up to deal with I was helping look after an apartment building, had 21 units, and beside it was a three-unit complex. And that person there decided to use social media to browbeat and put down the residents of our building. And fact is, the residents of the building were all either professional people in some capacity. And I went over there to stick up for the people, because they actually saw it. And I went and asked, she said she had cameras and everything else. So I went over there, but I had my phone on. Very nice, very quiet, and asked about, could I see the video to find out what the problem is? Because I understand you videoed it all, you put that up there. She became kind of brush it off. Yeah, I'll get that to you. So I kind of called her on it, just because of my background. I can tell when somebody's just flat lying. And I said, so you don't have video? And I called her out on that, and she began to yell at me, tell me to get off her thing, which I did. I left because she told me. She then took that and spun it up, because she felt slighted by the situation, called the police, and decided that she was going to make some kind of harassment issue out of it. So the great thing was the police came to talk to me, and I just said, here you go, handed them my phone, and I said, here it is. Looked at it, went back, gave her shit, and said if she ever phones again, she's going to be charged. So, that's the value of doing things right when you go there. So.
Documentation, that's pretty much every facet of this business goes a very, very long way, because you hope for the best, but you plan for the worst. And if you've documented a tenant relationship going sideways from the beginning, it's going to save you a lot of headache and trouble if you have to go down the eviction route.
Yeah.
And Bill, I know you've preached this a lot. How do you do documentation? It's probably a good sidebar question to have.
Many different ways, it seems. I love creating paper trails, so I always follow everything I do up. I keep journals of, especially when things are going sideways with a tenant. You should do it even when they're not. But you start getting issues with tenants, you basically have a journal, and here's times and dates that things have happened. Whenever you have a phone conversation, you follow it up with a letter/email, so that there's, hey, we talked on Tuesday, and you said you were going to do this, and it was going to be done by this day. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that, if there's any issues with that, and if that is indeed what we talked about and it's clear on both sides, let's get it done and move forward. There's your copy off to the tenant, and it's like, hey, Jimmy, just want you to know I sent you that email right now. It's about the conversation we had the other day. Just wanted to confirm you received that email I sent. Yeah, I saw the email. I'll read it later tonight. Now you've got confirmation they've actually got the email, and they've indicated that they're going to read it. So now they can't say I never saw anything. It's like layer after layer after layer.
Yeah. So you're using multiple means of communication. You're talking about phone calls, texts, and emails, and you layer references to all the different conversations in the other formats, so it's all documented.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
I just had a person today get a hold of me. They were struggling out in Alex. They were struggling with how to deal with serving a document. And, I told them, deal directly with the person. And he said, well, he's never around, whatever. I said, okay, then just post it on the door, make sure it's taped up there, your 14-day notice, and also that you weren't willing to renew their contract that ended at the end of the month. They did that and sent the guy a picture of it posted on the door through the phone. And it was funny because he said that, well, I'm not moving. And the gentleman just said, well, I'm getting a bailiff and having you thrown out. He says, okay, I'll be out on the 1st.
So,
Well, the best part of your response to that, so then you've got confirmation again to he's been served.
Yeah.
Just to add with those posting, what I was taught years ago is to post it across the door frame and the door. So basically it has to hit them in the face as they're going in or out. So it's much easier to see than have it taped off to the side of the door. And you also want to put it on all the entrances. So if they have a front and a back door, put one on the front, one on the back, and then they can't say we never saw it.
Yep. I'm going to go to Don Gray. I'm just going to put a plug in for our guys here. Don mentions that you can also, if you're really feeling uncomfortable serving, you don't want to do all the things we just talked about, you can hire a process server and they'll serve it for you. And those costs, get the receipt, put it in your package, and you can claim those costs back through your hearing. If you have one, if you don't, then you're going to have to eat the costs because that's what you choose not to have a hearing. So Don Gray and Conrad Rattray are the sort of our legal. They are our agents for the courts. They're not lawyers, but they act in the capacity of an agent, which you're allowed to do in the province of Alberta. So they cover up in the Edmonton and northern Alberta areas down to Leduc. We have Rob Bonin, who is covering the basically the Wetaskiwin down to Olds kind of area, which he'll and east and west as well. And Dean Marsh, who is down in Airdrie, and he covers South Calgary, south through to Medicine Hat and the border. So a lot of the guys will try to save you a lot of money. And Dean, he just told me a story where he did a lot of negotiating so that. With the tenant, contact the tenant, and he's that buffer. He's the person that both sides can kind of go through. And he managed to save a lot of money for the landlord by just negotiating with the tenant to leave and to get out on certain terms. And another one he had up in Olds where the guy was pretty much a professional criminal. And Dean talked to him in the language he understood and managed again to negotiate that guy out because he was quite prepared to bully the landlord. But Dean, also having a background in law enforcement and the courts, knew what language to talk to the guy. And after the guy managed to process it in his head and translate it, he realized how much trouble he's going to get into if he continued. And out he went. So these guys do a great job. And talk to them. They give you lots of free advice. They're not going to walk you through every point of it because that's their job, but they're certainly going to say, here's your starting point and this is how you do it, and they're there to help you.
One of the things I want to point out just quickly about evictions is one of the worst things that a landlord typically has to go through. I mean, there's hail damage and all this other fun stuff we get to deal with on occasion too. But I see so many landlords that go through these evictions and then they end up selling their property because it was just too much stress and hassle. Once you've gone through an eviction or two, it's so much easier and you become so much more prepared. You know the words and the process, and it just expedites everything the next time or the next time or the time after. Plus, it makes you a better screener so that you don't have to go through all that crap again. So.
Yeah, experience is a great teacher. Absolutely.
We had a chance here with Renee Goodbrands. She's got a question. Can you see it? Yeah. There you go.
So Renee's asking about capital gains. It used to be that you could live in your rental property for 1 year to avoid paying capital gains. What's the current laws regarding capital gains if I want to sell my rental property? Well, the Liberals have changed it quite a bit over the last couple of years. And maybe I'm thinking a year ago now that, you know what, this is a question for accountants. Your accountant, really. I am not in a position to answer this.
Can I jump in then? So here's a short-term answer. It's really depending on your specific situation and what kind of deductions you may have to go with that. But the rest of the part of that rule is, if you lived in the property originally and moved out and rented it, you have to figure out what the value of the property was at that time, and any gain from there is theoretically where you pay capital gains on. That's how it used to be, but like you said, they keep on changing the rules. So now if they implement this potential wealth tax, there could be a whole bunch of different rules coming into play. So whatever it is now, our answer could be wrong in ours.
Yeah. You know what? If you're, ask your accountant. If they're not sure, definitely get a second or third opinion, because if you don't put the taxes in right when you do the sale in the following tax year, it's the difference of getting taxed from, a ton of money, right? So you want to make sure you've got your ducks in order on that. Why I remember it being the Liberals were making it where they could actually tax you on your primary residence. If you claimed a business resides in your residence and you did write-offs, then that portion would become a taxable gain if you ever chose to sell your primary residence. And again, like what Bill said, it all depended on the date where you first declared business in that residence, and then that value would be the starting point. And then 3 years later, you choose to sell. If your property increased 3% year over year, at 20% is what you wrote off as a personal business. Now you got to write off capital gains on that appreciation at 20%. So yeah, long story short, accountants, they are the people that know those questions. It's a very detailed business, so you want to make sure you get the right advice because it could save you a ton of money.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump back to one of our things. I just reading through, Sean Claremont put something back up in June. I just found it here that it reads like this: the parties to any RTDRS application are permitted to effect service by way of email as long as the parties have previously communicated by email and the party serving the notice is able to demonstrate the tenancy.
Yeah, I forgot about this. I'm glad you brought this up. So it's setting precedence, right? So if you've been dealing with this tenant for 8 months and all your communications have been via email and they respond to it, and then all of a sudden they go cold or they go MIA, they don't answer any emails, well, that's still a valid means of communication because it's been used from the start and how you could serve someone. And texting, I almost think texting goes that same way. Well, you can't really text an attachment, so that might be more of an email thing.
I guess you can text a photo of it, right?
I've seen it. I've heard it done before. So
see how it goes. Yeah. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour there, MacKenzie. This went pretty fast. Holy smokes.
Yeah. So I was going to throw this up here. So Bill brought something up. So someone commented, Bill Biko is exactly the conversation my wife and I had. Our experience was an eye-opener as a landlord plus crap / good experience at what we should do to become a better landlord. Yeah, and that's probably back on the tenant screen side. Absolutely.
So the other thing there is that that person who is selling that house, they're selling it as a family home with a rental suite. Yeah, that would be even more important to possibly leave it vacant if you could, because if the family's living upstairs, they may want to have control over who they're choosing to put in below them.
Oh, yep.
If they've got kids, they may want to make sure that somebody downstairs has got a child, or who knows.
They may want to use it as a nanny or a nanny suite or a disabled suite or something too. So
it could just open your options up to make sure you sell faster versus pigeonholing yourself.
Yeah.
So going back to posting that notice on an eviction bill, how you said to put it across the door and the frame, I actually like what this user brought up, and maybe
that's Chris, Don Gray. Don Gray.
They have Don Gray some credit. I don't know who it is because I can't see it. But yeah, I put it over the lock as well. And if you come back 24 hours later and it's gone or it's been ripped apart, there's a hole through it. You know that the door's been entered, and again, it's another layer of validation that they've been served, which is great. I do have one thing here I want to bring up here, and I think this is gonna be a fun one. So someone wrote, Beal wrote a day ago on the group, what happens if a lease, or did you already ask this question, Chris? Correct me if I missed it. What happens if a rental lease finishes and a new lease hasn't been re-signed? Does it automatically go month to month?
The answer is yes.
I'm going to argue on that one, actually. But
well, it depends on what you get in there. Oh, Bill, you just sort the two of us out here, Bill, and just tell us how this is.
Well, Chris, give us your answer first. I'll take Bill's, and if I have to rebuttal, I'll provide.
No, I'm not even going to jump in. I'm going deferring to the senior.
Okay,
hey, quit that. So this comes down to what you've done initially. If you just don't do anything, yes, now it's defaulted to month. If you've given them notice that they need to sign something and things are changing, or they will be in breach of the notice or a breach of the lease, now you're in different territory because you've informed them that it's not going to month, they're going to be in breach. So if they do stay, and I don't have the specific answer on this, I read this again earlier where somebody said once you take the money, it is confirmed month to month. I can't verify that one for sure, so I don't know if Don can jump in on that or somebody else who's listening, but can evict them for overholding at that point because they've extended past the lease term.
And it depends how your lease is set up too. If you don't have anything explicitly written in your initial lease saying that this lease does not roll into month to month, it is, you got to have some that we're into. But again, I think there's that part. So it's, you know, starting on the right step. But a lot of this, to what you said, Bill, right? It's timing, right? So if the lease ends on the 31st of July, you're now the 15th in the August, and you've had no communication, your position's pretty soft to enforce their overholding. But if you talk to them on the 21st of July and say, hey guys, this is the end of the lease, I'm not renewing. If you don't move out by the 31st, you are withholding. Going into August, you got to have those communications within a reasonable time frame. I think really sets the grounds for where this lease will go. But it is but to Chris's point, and you are correct, Chris, it is law. If you don't enforce it and they still continue to pay rent and you're collecting it, which you're assuming that they're going to continue renting, a term lease does go month to month, or roll into a month to month arrangement, which is scary, because if you had a term lease and you don't have anything new signed, you're now kind of on a verbal agreement. There's no documentation on that new lease that they're in now, and it's month to month.
Yep. So a lot of leases I've seen people show me have got that clause in them that say it's automatically going to roll over to month. And I tell everybody, just strike that, take that right out of your lease. You do not want that in there at all.
Yeah, no good.
Mine were originally set up that way, and I got rid of that because I was using a lease that my partner had, and you got to get rid of that stuff. So.
From an outside perspective, it seems smart. Like, oh, if this person's going to stay, it rolls into month to month, I'm still collecting rent, I don't have to find a new tenant. But on the experience side, Chris, you already mentioned this early in the show. I'm just going to recap it quickly, though. The power you lose going from a term lease to a month to month is huge. And Bill, maybe you want to rifle or add on to this. Like, you have the ability to, in a term lease, if you choose not to renew, you don't have to renew. No questions asked. Does not matter the reason why you choose not to renew that lease. You don't have to. It's really, if that relationship's not working for you, don't renew, bring someone else in. If you get in a month-to-month situation, now you need a reason as a landlord to end that lease. And Bill, maybe you can help me out. What are some of those reasons or examples you have to have?
Non-payment, a breach of the lease, moving into the property. There is one, it's kind of the catch-22 when you're selling the property. You can't evict the tenant until you've got a confirmed offer, and then you still have to give them 90 days notice. So that makes it, in a buyer's market, that's horrible, because now by the time the offer is accepted, you still need another 90 days on the back end. So they're not buying the property for 4 months. And it just makes it really awkward to close something 4, 5, 6 months down the road, unless that's your whole plan. And there's a couple of comments here that I'm imagining that's Don saying, yeah, accepting money will make it a periodic lease, and do not accept money and they become overholding tenants. So, and like he says, overholding is the easiest eviction you can get out there. So
perfect.
There's
cool. Well, there you go.
We're at an hour. Fantastic. We got one thumbs up. Oh, I wanted to explain this. If you guys like the show, we're doing things are good, you guys are getting valuable information, definitely give us a thumbs up. It's like a virtual high five that's COVID free. We love it. We appreciate it. Share us the love online. It's kind of what we do these days, watching hockey with no fans. It's different world right now. But Bill, thank you as always, coming out, giving your time. We really appreciate it. Do you got something you want to spotlight right now? Are you working on anything? Is there a charity? What do you want to share? Here's a plug.
I got nothing to share right now. Isn't that disappointing? I'm just excited to come out. So I like the opportunity just to hang out with a couple of cool guys and talk real estate. So it's always fun. Cool. One of the things I've learned is when you do anything long enough, you forget what you know. And having these kind of conversations, it's like, oh yeah, master keys. Oh yeah, doing this. Oh yeah, crap of it either becomes so natural, you start speaking a different language when you're talking to other people, and they're, what do you mean by a master key? And it's, oh yeah, you don't know about that, or what do you mean about process servers? So it's kind of fun getting to do stuff like this and talk away.
Definitely.
Yep. It's a lot of fun doing this. And you know what, even tonight talking, we don't know everything, but I certainly learned a little bit, some of the tricks from the old sharks on the team here. So, it's nice to have you here, Bill. And I got Don. He's pumping answers in here, left, right, and center, because he's been through the hoops here on the legal end of it. So lots of value in our page. Again, when you're putting your information down, make sure you know what you're quoting. Try not to start it off with, I think it should be. Let's get the facts out there, because the more knowledge we have, the more power we have. And
I guess to add to that, read through all the answers before you answer the same thing as well. So I see that quite often. And I'm prepared to go answer away, and it's like, oh, look, Rob's answered, or Don's it. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah. That's another thing. I got a few things where people said, well, how come you deleted my comment, or how come you deleted my post? I said, well, it's the third time the same post has been up, and I'm trying to keep the page clean and clean it up. The thing in British Columbia was landlord removing the doors and windows. It probably went up 4 times when I pulled it down. But read through the whole thread, because and then you can just add on to somebody's comment if there's something else. It just keeps the content a little tighter and a little easier for everybody to read. So
absolutely.
Thanks again, MacKenzie, for having us and organizing this thing again.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for the conversations. Like Bill said, I mean, I totally agree. It's you learn all these tips and tricks and these nuances, and then things you take for granted, or you don't describe in a certain way that makes it click for someone that's new, and they ask the question a little bit of a different frame. You're like, oh yeah, that is important now when I think about it. So I did learn that a while ago, and it's just a different way to explain things. And it's good. Like, I have these conversations. I find so much value in it, and I am kind of a nerd about it. I mean, I have a YouTube channel on Tandscreen, for example, but there's so many nuances of business, and if we all share a little bit tidbits of information, we're all going to do better as a whole, making the landlord profession a lot better for everyone across Alberta, and better housing for people who need it. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next week. Have a good weekend. And I'm going to plug it quickly. Go Flames, go. Sorry, Edmonton, you're already out. We won in your dome.